Welcome to episode 31 of the Wise Mind Fireside Chats, the Wi-Fi chats. We're all sitting here smiling because we know roughly where this conversation might go, following on from the last one, which was about problems and tensions. And we are now going to tackle that thorny subject of boundaries. They're talked about frequently. If you really put somebody to the test, they frequently don't actually have any, don't even know what they are. So let's get into the subject of boundaries. The floor is yours.
Boundaries necessary. I'll just start with that. Healthy boundaries. Let's preface that because there are unhealthy boundaries which we can easily turn into just rigidity, right? And rules, like we've talked about, like strong, steadfast rules without any leeway, right? And then there's on the other side loose boundaries or boundaries that don't exist at all, which could in fact turn you into a doormat or just like a revolving door of taking shit that you don't want, kind of thing. So I think healthy boundaries is what we're aiming for here, somewhere in between.
Yeah, to add on to Erica, I see boundaries as not a wall, but a gate that can open and close.
Oh, I like that. It's a nice little analogy.
It is because it allows for flexibility if something comes up. I've created a boundary, and it's for myself. It's not something that I'm putting on other people, but I don't want to be stuck in there, or having to work really hard to climb over a fence. If there's an opportunity for the landscape around the fence to be negotiated or for a gate to open and close at suitable times, that is something that I think I personally and probably others need to recognize is something that can happen with our personal boundaries.
I really like that analogy because it's like it allows for the process of discernment, right? The gate is the discernment. Like I'm gonna and I'm the gatekeeper. So no entry unless I let you in. And I'm gonna use all my discernment and whatever my boundaries are, this invisible line sort of how I decide what's okay and not okay for me. And then I'll let you in or I won't let you in. I really like that analogy.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Actually, it makes sense because if a boundary, as you said, Erica, becomes a rule that can hold us back, that can actually get in the way of building connections, that can actually cost us dearly in our relationships if a boundary becomes a rigid concrete wall rather than a wooden fence with a doorway. Saying that, of course, it's important to have those boundaries. I admit I had hardly any boundaries years ago, which actually led me to saying yes all the time, which led me to be frustrated. It, you know, made me feel people were taking me for granted, they were taking advantage of me. But it was all my own doing because I had absolutely no boundaries in place. And people just knew when something happened, let's ask Gabi, she will say yes. But that was my own decision in the end of the day. I had to learn how to put out boundaries. And it wasn't about saying no to people, it was about staying healthy, not to get burned out, to make sure I'm not overcommitting myself. Because without boundaries, we easily overcommit in what's happening. We can't actually fulfill anymore what we promised to do. And then we let people down.
I like what you just said about it not being no and not being controlling. It's a potential for a yes. But what I would like anyone who feels they're capable of speaking to it, because we're talking about boundaries like we're all on the same page. And would somebody like to tackle? Erika mentioned healthy boundaries. What do we even mean by a boundary? So, for those who are as confused as I was, even up until a year or so ago, what are we actually talking about with boundaries?
I think it's just like this, like we're saying, this invisible line, or this, I refer to it as my own personal handbook of how I'm operating within myself and in my life, right? If my life is a business and I'm the CEO of that business, my boundaries are my handbook of how I'm going to engage, right? So it incorporates all of what we've already just said. It's also really important to understand that boundaries are not one size fits all. It depends on who, what situations, what circumstances, right? And it there's a lot of matching energy and deciding, right? My boundaries within my workplace are not the same as they are within my home, obviously, because I have people that I care about tremendously at home. So I'm a little more open to what I'm willing to give inside of my home than I am in work. But in short, I feel like it's just this invisible line that we place around that serves to protect us. It doesn't serve to keep people out. It serves to protect us, our energy, our emotions, everything that makes us who we are, gives us an idea of what behaviors are acceptable, what we're willing to tolerate, and what we're not. What's okay and what's not okay for me personally. That's how I interpret it out.
Yeah, I love what you said, Erika, and I think I may have a tangible example for it. For example, if I take my mobile phone, I was available all the time to a point where I was given out to if I didn't answer my phone or text message straight away within 3 minutes. I was given out to why didn't you answer, right? And I realized I can't live my life like that because I might be work, I might be busy, I might be working on something. So I had to create for myself just the boundary where I said, yes, I will come back to you, but on my own terms. I'm not the slave to the mobile phone. I'm not available 24/7 every 5 minutes looking at it. So I make sure I'm answering you back straight away. So this is not pushing people away or building a wall or keeping it out of my life. It's just the boundary I said, look, when I have time, I come back to you, I give you a call, but not instantly. So that's a boundary I have now. So it's not about, as Marcella said, building a wall or keeping people out. It's just managing my time, managing my space, managing my energy.
Yes. There's something that I say quite often, and it is people will treat you the way you allow them to treat you. So boundaries is kind of like the, I think, what did you say, Erica? You said something about you're the CEO of your life, and the boundaries is what?
The handbook, like the
The
employee handbook,
handbook or the mode of operation. I would say the mode of operation or
policies.
the handbook, right? Of how you go about life. And as Erica was saying, for different situations, you might have different thoughts. So but the bottom line for me is that you're teaching people how to treat you. So if you're a people pleaser and you're always saying yes, 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 and it's so interesting that when you decide that I'm going to take care of myself or I'm going to take care of me, and you say no, people look at you like, what's wrong with you? It's because you have conditioned them that you're always going to say yes. Let's go to Marcella because she'll say yes. And they may even get offended, but you are shifting how they view you and how they treat you.
This raises a question for me, particularly around the handbook, because at what point do you give out the handbook so that people know what your boundaries are?
When necessary. That my handbook is my handbook. It doesn't mean that I have to give it out to everybody. It's like I said, it's not one size fits all, and not every boundary actually needs to be explained. In fact, I think that there's no explanation necessary. When I set a boundary, it's got nothing to do with what you understand. This is what it is. So sometimes it's even nonverbal. It's just, no, like you get the I'm not engaging kind of thing. But then there are times where you have to properly communicate. Again, here we go with communications, and there's a whole art around scripting a boundary. Like there are ways to say it, because sometimes people will think telling somebody what to do, that's not setting a boundary. That's just telling somebody what to do and trying to control them. Like, so for example, you have to be on time, right? You got to be on time or whatever. No, the proper boundary would be, if you are late, I am not waiting for you. There's a big difference there. This is my boundary. You do whatever you want, but I'm telling you, this is what I'm going to do. Instead of me saying, you better not be late. Well, okay. Like, what is that doing other than trying to control somebody else? So I don't necessarily hand out the handbook. I will script it if I have to in certain situations, or it might just simply sound like, no, thank you. Sorry, can't do that. Or there's no talking at all, and it's the body language or just the disengagement. That's personally for me.
I'm reminded of that little droid in one of the recent Star Wars movies that just says, no, thank you, and rolls away. It's as simple as that. It's not for me. No, thank you. And off he rolls. Marcella, you wanted to say something?
Real quick, actually, I have two things. Is that what Erika said is so true, that your question was, when do you hand out the handbook? But we're the CEO of our life, and this is our handbook. So that does not mean that everybody gets a handbook. It's my handbook. And so I choose how I'm going to use my handbook. And the second thing is, I have to share this little story. It's so funny to me anyway. Alec, when you were saying, no, thank you. So we were doing a craft show, and a family came to see us that we knew. And my husband was asking the little girl can I get a hug? And she said, no, thank you. Now, that is a boundary, right? She said, no, thank you. And I just thought that was so cute and funny. And, at that time, she was probably about 7.
The handbook is really how we conduct ourselves and how we turn up for other people. I mean, people just know I'm not answering my phone within 3 minutes. They never question it. I never told them that. I just got used to it because that's how I conduct myself now. There's only one person who questioned me about it, and I told that person. Nobody else knows, right? Because it's just the way I conduct myself. And as Marcella beautifully says, the way we conduct ourselves, it's the way people experience us. They accept that usually. It's only us in our own mind who think, oh, I can't say no, or I have to please the people, because it's in us that we think we have to do it. Funny enough, other people don't really expect it if you don't do it, if you don't conduct yourself that way. And we had a beautiful example the other day with somebody we know will not answer an email unless he really wants to. And everybody knows not to expect an answer back. But that's the way we know that person is operating. So a handbook is just how we conduct our lives, and people know.
So it's funny because, sorry, go ahead, Brett.
No, you can go. I was going to say, don't be surprised that if you don't have boundaries and you start creating boundaries, that you lose people that you considered as friends because you played a certain role in their life. And when you stop playing that role in their life, you're no longer needed. And that's going to be a hard truth that you will find when you start creating boundaries. and certain boundaries when you feel like you're being taken advantage of and you've been in that spot, right? When you start creating that, when you're building that wall now and you're trying to be clear and you're trying to be honest about it, and all of a sudden they're no longer there, or they come at you angry or whatever it may be. Yeah, so just know that when you start creating boundaries, you will start losing certain people because if you're not aware, we play a certain role for certain people, right? And we know that they know our handbook. And if that handbook wasn't clear and they're taking advantage of it, and you start revising the handbook and it doesn't work for them, well, then they're going to push you aside, right? So just bringing that point up because boundaries, whether you have them or don't have them, or you're growing into boundaries, just just a fair warning, right? Be prepared to learn who your true friends are and accept you for you entirely with your boundaries and growing with your boundaries. They will remain by your side and understand and have that healthy communication because they have healthy boundaries. And other ones that don't have healthy boundaries, that's where the conflict will come in. But, I've had that experience. So just sharing that with everybody who's listening to this, right? So just wanted to bring that up. Thanks.
That's what I was going to say, but bouncing off of what Marcella said earlier about people being like, whoa, what's wrong with you? If you suddenly start to realize I need to take care of myself and establish a different sort of boundary, that is the ultimate side effect, right? Like we going in with the knowledge that people are going to, whoever you're establishing the prior non-existent boundary with, you're going to turn into the monster. It's going to be you are going to be the villain in somebody's narrative. Just get cool with it, because that's what's going to happen. So that's the first step in getting ready to establish a healthy boundary, is being okay with being somebody's story of what made something go wrong.